Welcome to Session 2, OGT Social Studies Review. What we're going to be doing now is just going over a bunch of the tests, and I want to show you how to be a better test taker while we go over the social studies tests. I want to be able to show you what the test questions are like and how to be able to get through them even if you don't know the information. One of the things you want to do is be able to scribble up the test. We're allowed to do that. Any answers you mark in your test booklet aren't graded, so you need to make sure you get your test answer into your answer booklet. So look at the answers first. The Marshall Plan, the Berlin Blockade, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the independence movement in India. So those are the things they want you to decide. You always want to find out what the question actually is because they give you some background that might answer the actual question. The use of atomic weapons at the end of World War II. All right, so we're talking about the end of World War II. Fostered fears about the potential use during the Cold War years. So the Cold War years, what the heck was a Cold War? If you remember, that wasn't exactly a war that was declared. It was one that they were threatening things. So these fears were critical in determining U.S. response to what? So we were looking at the U.S. response. So it happened at the end of World War II, and it was during the Cold War, and they want to know what it had to do with the U.S. response. Well, the Marshall Plan, we know it wasn't a plan during that time. The Berlin Blockade, now, did Berlin have anything to do with the U.S. response? The Cuban Missile Crisis, now, would the U.S. response to that? As far as the Cold War, and the independence movement in India. So I want to get rid of the ones that I know it's not. So it wasn't the Marshall Plan. Berlin Blockade, if they're blockading something in Berlin, U.S. wouldn't care. The Missile Crisis, now we're talking about the Cold War, and we're looking about the fears about what's going on as far as, you know, is there going to be another war, and is the U.S. responding? How about independence in India? You know, would we care about that? Would we respond to that? Probably not. So our best guess would be the Cuban Missile Crisis. Here, rely on the use of stereotypes. Do I know what that word is? Are based on unstated assumptions, are consistent with other credible sources of information, are presented in a manner that is clear and easy to understand. So, a political action committee produces a television commercial. So, there's a television commercial going on that criticizes past actions of a candidate for president. So that's the background. So we got a television commercial, and it's criticizing. The advertisement could be a credible source of information if it claims in the advertisement. So we've got an advertisement that's criticizing, and we want to know if it's a credible source or not. And you'll be studying in there what's a credible source or not, because they're going to be talking about slander or libel, and what is a credible source when you're doing research papers. And is it relying on the use of stereotypes, like they're talking about all men do this, or all women do this, or all politicians do this? Are they based on unstated assumptions? Like, we assume that politicians are crooks. We assume that lawyers are crooks. We assume that women shouldn't hold office. So that would be unstated assumptions. Are they consistent with other credible sources? Okay, here's that word again, credible. And are they presented in a manner that is clear and easy to understand? Well, just because I understand it, does that make it true? So there's a commercial and it's criticizing a candidate, but if it's a credible source, I need to make sure it comes from credible information. So again, C is our answer. And again, it's okay to write on this, and it's okay to substitute words in here. The test doesn't matter if you write on it. You just want to make sure your answer gets back into your answer document. If we're taking the test online, there's a highlighter you can use. You're going to use the graph to answer the questions. Now, a lot of times we don't take the time to study the graph. What's the graph even about? I want to know the percent of the U.S. workforce that were engaged in farm labor between these years. On this side, we're talking about the percentage of the U.S. workforce. Here, we're saying in what year, and then we're talking about what percentage. So we want to talk increased urbanization, decreased immigration, advances in communication, and reduced population growth. So they're all talking about something different. So I have to make sure I know what each of them are talking about. Urbanization. Did they go to the urban areas outside the city? Decreased immigration. So it's lower. It lowered the number of people coming into the U.S. Advances in communication. So did the way we communicate with one another increase, or did it improve? Reduced population growth. It was the population getting lower. So each one of those is talking about something different, and each one of these adjectives is saying increase, decrease, reduced, advances. Sometimes that trips us up. So you need to take your time and evaluate those answers. So the economic development, so we're talking about economic development of the United States between 1870 and 1950. So I need to know what years we're talking about. Help produce the results shown in the graph above. The trend shown in the graph is associated with. So 1870, so that's right here, and 1950 will be all the way over here. So economic development. The trend shown in the graph, we're talking about the percentage of workforce and farm labor. And the graph shows if it's going down this way and down in percentage. Is that an increase or a decrease? So that would be a decrease in something. So would that trend be involved with increased in urbanization because these are the people working on the farms? Decreased immigration. Well, does this show that more people are coming into the U.S.? I mean, less people are coming into the U.S.? Are we, was the telephone or radio or something, advances in communication affecting this? Or was it population growth? What was going on then that there were fewer people working on the farms? That was the time of, we have to remember that was the time of the Industrial Revolution. And so where were people working then? They were working in the factories and whatever, so they moved to the cities and they moved to the urban area. So the answer would be A, increase in urbanization. Again, it says nothing about immigration, it says nothing about communication, and there's nothing about population growth in there. So you can't read something into it that's not there, which is we have a tendency to put over information into a question and then we get it wrong. Okay, desire for a return to cultural heritage, the need for working conditions in factories, improve working conditions, the desire to end legalized discrimination based on race, the belief in the importance of building a new country in Africa. What perspective of African Americans was reflected in the founding of the National Association for Advancement of Colored People, the NAACP, in 1909? What was reflected when they founded the NAACP? Was it a desire to return to their cultural heritage? Was it improving factory conditions? Was it to end legalized discrimination based on race? Or the belief of the importance of building a new country in Africa? Okay, they got the NAACP in the U.S. Do they care if they build a new country in Africa? Probably not. Did they want to return to the cultural heritage? That was part of it, but is that why they got an organization together and started fighting together for something? No. Did they want to improve working conditions in the factory? Yes, and they're going to fool you because there's going to be two answers and they're sort of right. They wanted to improve working conditions in the factory, but that wasn't going to serve just them. You know, the NAACP was focused on the colored people at that time, or the black people. And so what did they want? There still was legal discrimination based on race at that time. So they were focused on getting discrimination out of the workplace, out of population, out of, you go into a restaurant, riding buses, etc. So your answer is C. Okay, short answers. We're going to skip that one right now, and there's going to be a couple sessions just on how do you address short answers. They give you a point just for restating the question, so make sure you do that. Even if you don't know anything, restate the question. Okay, attempt to disrupt public safety. Publicly oppose U.S. foreign policy, express opinions that are controversial, are members of religious organization. So freedom of assembly is guaranteed by the First Amendment, but assemblies may legally be broken up when the protesters, so freedom of assembly, that means I'm allowed to gather or assemble. And it's the First Amendment. Remember, you had those sheets of the amendments. Make sure you find a way to learn what those are. But those assemblies or those groups can be broken up when the people in that group attempt to disrupt public safety. That's a possibility. Publicly oppose U.S. foreign policy. That's not hurting anybody. And, there's always protesters about different things. So that one's not going to be an answer. Express opinions that are controversial. Well, that's why people gather, and that's why the freedom of assembly is there, they're opposed to something or opposed to a law. Are members of a religious organization. It's typically, I won't say typically, a lot of times religious organizations gather together and form assemblies because of their religious beliefs going against different laws that they want to make or going against different organizations. So that one won't be. But if there's an issue with public safety, it's up to the government to make sure that the safety of the greatest order is kept. So if, a group decides to block off a street or block off a sidewalk or go after people, then they will arrest or disrupt that assembly. A salesman at a computer product store, a neighbor who works for a computer manufacturing company, a television advertisement for the most popular brand of computer, an independent survey of consumers who have purchased computers. Which source of information would be the most credible or the least biased in determining the durability of various brands of computers? So we want the least biased, and we want to find what's going to be the most durable brand of computers. So, is the salesman going to be the least biased? Or is he just trying to sell you a product? He may be helpful and he may have a lot of information, but you don't know what kind of commission he gets. A neighbor who works for a computer manufacturing company, well, he may know a lot as well, but is he working for Apple Computer and saying Apple's the best? A television advertisement for the most popular brand of computer. Again, that's a popular brand, and they're getting paid to do that advertisement. Or would you look at an independent survey of consumers who have purchased computers? So which one is going to be the most credible? The other ones have some bias in there. They work for them, they're being paid to advertise them, or they have some connection to that company. But independent surveys are people who have purchased them, they've used them, and they give your opinion of how they work for them. So that would be your best source, and credible and least biased source. Increase taxes on the production of U.S. automobiles, create free trade agreements with automobile producing countries, increase tariffs and import restrictions on foreign automobiles, implement stricter controls of competition among U.S. automobile manufacturers. Which action could the U.S. government employ to protect U.S. automobile manufacturers from foreign competition? So we're talking about automobile manufacturers, and we want to protect them from foreign competition. So what could the government do? What action? Increase taxes on the production of U.S. automobiles. Well, if I have to pay more taxes on a U.S. automobile, chances are I'm not going to buy it. So I'm not going to do that one. Create free trade agreements with automobile producing countries. Well, if there's free trade agreements, then I can buy a foreign car or I can buy an American car. It won't matter because it's going to cost me the same. So that's not going to work. Increase tariffs and import restrictions on foreign automobiles. Now that's a possibility. If it's going to cost foreign cars more, or foreign manufacturers more to get their cars here, then it's going to cost the consumer more to buy a foreign car. So that would protect the U.S. manufacturer because I want a cheaper car probably, unless I'm just really sold on having a Volkswagen. Implement stricter control of competition among U.S. automobile manufacturers. Well, if I control the U.S. manufacturers, that's not the problem to begin with. The problem is protecting against foreign competition. So that one won't work. So again, our answer is C. restore world trade disrupted by World War II, encourage industrial growth began during World War II, establish policies to help nations pay World War II debts, intervene in world conflicts to prevent another war such as World War II. In the United Nations Charter, member nations pledge to unite our strength to maintain international peace and security. Since ratification of its charter following World War II, the primary goal of the United Nations has been to. So, the United Nations Charter pledge, unite our strength and maintain international peace and security. So what's their goal? Was it to restore trade? I didn't hear that. I heard peace and security. Encourage industrial growth begun during World War II. Establish policies to help nations pay for World War II debts. Now, that might have been part of what they needed to do, but that wasn't in the United Nations. Intervene in world conflicts to prevent another war such as World War II. International peace and security. So our answer would be D. Okay, emigration to Africa. This is how I remember it. Immigration from Asia. Immigration coming in is an I. Emigration is going out. So immigration coming in to Australia. Emigration going out to South America. Religious diversity in the United States has increased in the last 50 years. One factor that has contributed to this increase has been an increase in, so religious diversity, that's what we're talking about, has increased in the last 50 years. So we're talking about religious diversity. And so it's in the United States. So chances are something's coming into the United States to increase that diversity. So we just need to find out what one's coming in. Is it from Asia, Australia? Which one would it be? Well, Australia is a smaller country, and they would not have as many diverse religions as Asia, which is a much larger country with many diverse religions. So I would guess that it would be B. The other ones are emigration, meaning they're leaving the United States. But since it's been increased in the United States, we want to guess that it's an immigration coming into. (11 through 16), and you're going to find out that there isn't one, were field questions, and they weren't released. So the next question is going to be 17. I'm going to try to keep our sessions to half an hour so it doesn't make you crazy. So we'll finish up with 19, and that'll be it. Remember, if you miss a session, it's always going to be here on tape, and you can listen to it, and you can re-listen to it. And make sure you check. And you can do flashcards for your vocabulary words. Make sure you do that for the amendments, and do that for the different types of governments. 17 is a short answer. When considering the length of the report, the cost of producing, so this is the length, the cost, the number of claims, and the accurate use of facts. So the use of facts, again, just like immigration, emigration, or like the other question was communication and all those other things, each one is addressing something else. So be cautious when you see those. Underline them so you know which was which. When considering the reliability of a report that promotes hybrid gas electric cars as environmental friendly, what should be carefully considered? So, what should be considered? And we want reliability. The length of the report, do I care how long it is? Nope. Well, I do because I don't want to read the whole thing. The cost of producing the report, does it matter how much it costs them to print this thing? The number of claims in the report. Does it matter how many claims they put in there? Possibly, but does that mean it's a reliable report? Or the accurate use of facts? Do I want to know the facts about this hybrid car? Or do I want to know the number of claims, what they say they can do? I want to know the facts. Give me the facts and then give me the percentages. Let me know what this thing can do. So our answer would be D. Liberty as a natural right of man, separation of governmental powers, personal rights as less important than civil order, the authority of absolute monarchs. Again, our answers are very diverse. We're talking about natural rights, separation of powers, personal rights, and authority of monarchs. So many Latin American nations granted their independence early in 19th century. The relationship between the people and their government changed. Slavery existed under colonial governments, but some of the new nations, such as Haiti, did not permit slavery. The abolition of slavery was based on Enlightenment ideas of liberty as a natural right of man. So we're talking about the Enlightenment ideas and abolishing slavery. So you have to know a little bit about all of those. So natural right of man was the separation of powers. Was it personal rights is less important than civil order? And the authority of absolute monarch. Well, it wasn't, where was the monarch in there? So it was talking about new governments, but there wasn't the authority of a monarch. Did they say personal rights were less important? Well, they abolished slavery, and they didn't say there was disorder or civil disorder, so that's not it. They didn't say anything about separation of powers. They said the people and their government changed, and that slavery existed, but it didn't anymore, so that's not it. But the Enlightenment ideas was that natural man has liberty. So that would be our answer. So I'm going to cut you off right there. We went over a lot. You can pick up test materials or anything you want in the main office, and you can mark them up any way you want. So see you next week, same time, same place.